Okay, so today we are going to talk about the buyer process, or turning leads that you may have received into legitimate buyers and how to identify them pretty quickly so that we don't really waste our time working with someone who says they're ready but maybe isn't quite ready. So that's the premise of our discussion today. You guys know I always start this way. I start with our mission and our vision. And again, these are company statements on the company level. Sure. And so I show them for a few reasons. One is to share with you guys who we are and what we aspire to be, but also to get you thinking about your own mission, your own vision, and your business. If you need help coming up with a mission statement for where you want to, or who you are in your business, or where you want to go, get with me, get with Charlie, get with somebody on your team. The most important thing is just get it written down. It's amazing what clarity that brings to you each day whenever you have a solid understanding of what you're trying to do. Again, these are our company values, but start thinking about what your values are. What is it that you want other people to pick up on when they work with you? Beliefs. Okay, so again, these are company beliefs, and the one that's in blue is the one that's most relevant to our discussion today, and that's that we believe focus is the key to success. And that'll make sense in a little bit. So what we're going to talk about today is an intentional and a proactive approach that's also focused, that's going to help buyers find and purchase their version of their perfect home. So hopefully when we're done, you guys should feel pretty confident to enter into these types of working relationships with buyers who we feel are serious, hopefully resulting in a big increase in your closings. This is what we're going to cover today. And again, this course is broken into two parts. So we're going to cover part 1 this morning, and then after lunch at 2 o'clock, we'll wrap it up and cover part 2. But in all, we're going to talk about the 5 stages of effectively working with buyers. We'll talk about how to facilitate those buyer conversations, help them identify appropriate properties that align with their priorities and their needs and their wants. We'll talk about preparing showing packages, showing homes, how to overcome those common hesitations that may come up from a buyer, and then we'll talk a little bit about closing the sale. And here's everything you can do to get the most out of today. Try to keep an open mind. Whether you've been in the business a long time or you're just starting out, maybe you have a way that you've done it already, but regardless, keep an open mind. Something may strike you differently. Try to limit your distractions and then write down anything that stands out to you. You guys know those booklets are yours to keep, so feel free to write on them however you see fit. Okay, so let's dive right in. So this is the overall plan, and this is all based on the overall real estate sales cycle. And you guys know that when we talk about the overall real estate sales cycle, it starts with prospecting. You got to go out there and find someone that you're going to be able to work with. So for our discussion today, it's open houses, it's our network. Who do we know that we can work with? And then any kind of results that may come from farming. That's where you pick a particular area or a particular neighborhood that you want to establish yourself as the dominant real estate expert in. Of course, after we prospect, our whole goal here is to what? Generate a lead. That's what we're after. So we're trying to find new leads and generate new business for ourselves. For our discussion today, obviously we're talking about the buyer process. And so when we generate a lead, we want to convert them into an actual buyer, and not just any buyer, but one who's serious, one who is motivated and qualified, somebody who we know there's really no risk for us. Okay. That's going to help us decide how we're going to move them through the process and how we treat our clients as we move them from contract to close. That's all that client care systems means. And then, of course, marketing comes into play. Just Sold is a wonderful marketing tool that you guys have available at your disposal. In fact, Joe, you've been doing a lot of Just Sold, and Dana does Just Sold. It's huge because it communicates that you guys get results. And that's what a buyer cares about. That's what a seller cares about. That you do what you say you're going to do. And then, of course, it just cycles right back up in the form of repeat leads or referral leads. So you guys can see how all of this sort of aligns with the overall real estate sales cycle. Okay, so then let's talk about the things that we need to know and the things that we need to have in order to do what we're setting out to do. And you guys know, if you've attended any other of these classes, that instead of just casting a really wide net and hoping that we get the things that we're after, we focus more on being very specific, very intentional with what we're setting out to do, and that we drill down as deep as we can on just a few things so that it's manageable, so that it can be put into a system or a process. It helps us to stay proactive in reaching the goal that we set out to reach. So in a nutshell, what we refer to this as, it's called the know, do, have. And so what we're trying to do is implement what we call a relationship-based selling method. So right over here, you'll see everything that we need to know, which is what? Dialogue. It always boils down to, what do we need to say? And then what do we need to have? We're going to have a few tools that are going to help these buyers. So a criteria sheet, my role sheet, which is awesome. This is probably one of my favorite things that you guys can include in these conversations. Then there's a your role sheet. So my role as the realtor, your role as the buyer. A buyer's rep agreement. Who uses those? Does anybody use a buyer's rep agreement? Okay. It always is funny to me because some people don't. Even if they've never met someone before, they're like, oh, it's fine. But I mean, I'm more like, okay, let's sign on the dotted line.
I'm hit or miss on them.
Are you?
It's like some people are weird about signing them, so I'm not going to make them sign it. And then if somebody doesn't want to work with me, I'm not going to make them.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not going to be a good situation.
Right.
But
Yeah. So you just kind of trust your intuition then.
do you have like my role sheets?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
I sure do. They should be examples in your packets there, what they look like, but I've got it typed up with the RE/MAX One logo. If you guys would like it, let me know and I can email that out. That way you guys can just include it. Okay, everybody says yes.
Yes to everything.
Yes to everything. Okay. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Okay, sales contract. I love this idea. We'll talk about that in just a second. Any kind of applicable addenda, which at the early stage of the game, I don't know that it's necessary right up front, but it's good just to include it. Letterhead, note cards, whatever you need to help a buyer in those initial conversations is what you should want to include. So that's everything we need to know, everything that we need to have in order to do what we're setting out to do. Side note, successful people work from goals, plans, and systems. It's just a fact. And so the relationship-based selling method, that's what we're setting out to do, that is our system, okay? So it's a specific sequential process, A to B to C, and then so on and so forth. So let's remind ourselves of what the vital buyer responsibilities are. There are 7 of them, and there are also 7 vital listing responsibilities. But for today, let's just focus on the buyers. And we do this because we're limited by time. That really is our only limit. But because there's only a limited amount of time in each day, we have to be able to define what is truly vital that we need to take care of in order to get the maximum output of our efforts, okay? In other words, eliminating the things that maybe are relevant but aren't something that needs to happen right now to push you closer to your goals, okay? So I had a boss one time that said, let's eliminate the fluff. Let's just get rid of the fluff. Let's focus on the things that we have to take care of in order to check this off our list. And I was like, but what if you like the fluff? And he's like, that's fine as long as you're doing the things that are vital right up front that have to happen. Then if you want to spend the rest of your day with the fluff, you go right ahead. And I said, okay, that works for me. So 7 vital buyer responsibilities. Number 1 is what you would expect, and that's what? Lead generation. It's finding a lead that we can nurture and convert, which leads us to number 2, which is converting those leads. Then we're going to move right into administrative prep, which, as you guys know, is probably 75% or more of the business. And then the selling is the other 25%. Number 4, getting into showing those properties. Number 5, writing and negotiating an offer or a contract. Closing preparation, all the things that come along with that. And then number 7, which is one of my hot buttons, is post-closing activities. That can make all the difference in the world whenever you are truly focused on the relationship that you've built and are continuing to build with your clients. Those post-closing activities tend to go a very long way. And we'll talk about what those are in just a bit. So since there are 7 responsibilities as it relates to buyers in our business, you guys should also know that there are 47 vital buyer activities. And this is gold, okay? So this right here, you should be putting in a big yellow box. This is basically a checklist that you guys can plug right into your businesses that will tell you, am I doing the things every time that I have a buyer that is truly vital to my business, to grow my business? Or am I doing all of these things plus some? Or maybe I'm not doing some of these things, but I'm doing something else. So this is designed to sort of be a focus tool to let you in on how your days are running in your business. If you're doing each of these 47 things whenever you're working with a buyer, you're doing all that you can to get the most out of those efforts. But if you're doing all 47 of these activities and you're doing another 47 on top of that, maybe those types of things can be delegated to someone else, or maybe those things can be pushed aside or not taken care of right then in the same day. We share this kind of thing with you guys so that you're not totally overwhelmed each day, and to kind of keep you in check on, how did I do today? What did I do that moved the needle just a little bit further to my goal? So utilize this as like a checklist. So the first activity, of course, is what? Generating a lead. It's finding a buyer, whether that comes from a face-to-face interaction, a phone call, an email, maybe it's somebody that you know, part of your network, open house. Those are kind of hit or miss. Sometimes buyers come in not for that property, but for another property. So that is a source. It's calls that come from yard signs or home ads, the internet. I think that's a big one these days. And then just listed. So that's another wonderful marketing tool. Sort of like just sold. Just listed is the precursor. So it's, hey, just listed. Sellers love this. It's great exposure for their listing, for their property. And it's good because whenever you do sell it, it's just, it's a full circle of your story. So I just listed this property. I just sold it. I get results based on how effective I am in my business. So we talked about lead generation. Now we've moved into lead conversion. So this is where the buyer process starts. And it starts with meeting in the office, which sometimes people kind of raise an eyebrow and they're like, what do you mean? This is how you can systemize working with a buyer to reduce the risk that comes with buyers and that they could be wasting your time if they aren't fully motivated, or maybe they're not qualified, or maybe they're just not ready, but they say that they are. This helps to reduce that risk. So when you have them meet you here in the office, it accomplishes a lot of different things. One, it'll gauge their motivation. How motivated are they? If somebody is really serious about wanting to buy a home, then they behave that way. If somebody is truly motivated, they behave that way. If they are a little reluctant to meet with you, to discuss the things that they want out of their home and what would make it a perfect home for them, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, a red flag should go up, because how could they possibly expect you to meet their needs if they're not willing to communicate what those needs even are? Okay, so meeting in the office, that's your first meeting with a potential buyer. When they are in the office, you want to move to the conference room. Dana does this a lot, and it's really, really nice. Do you guys know why we kind of encourage you all to have a meeting in the conference room versus, say, your own office? Neutral ground. Switzerland. So think about it, especially if it's a first-time home buyer, right? And they're already nervous because they don't know what to expect. And we're talking about a pretty substantial amount of money. If they come in and you're like, hey, come up to my office, that's intimidating, or it could be intimidating for somebody who's just starting out or somebody who you haven't met yet. So we say move to the conference room, one, because it tends to be a little bit bigger. So if they have stuff that they brought with them, they can spread out. You can spread out your things. And it's neutral territory. It's not coming into my space. It's not anything, but let's just come into this conference room together. The next step is to get on the selling channel, which really just means to get in the right frame of mind for the conversation that you're about to have. Then you'll have that conversation. You want to start by building the rapport. Why do you guys think it's important to build rapport right off the bat?
So they'll gain your trust.
Yes. And when they trust you, they what?
They'll stay with you.
They'll stay with you and they'll talk to you and they'll tell you any possible thing that could help you help them. So the more that you can open them up by building rapport with them and making them comfortable, the more likely it is that they're going to communicate better with you. Okay. So after you've had those icebreakers and you've built the rapport, it's time to set the tone for the meeting. And all that means is you're going to walk them through what you're going to talk about that day. Just kind of going through like the agenda for the day. It starts by uncovering their needs and their wants in their next home, or maybe it's their first home. Then you'll help to prioritize those wants, because sometimes, you know, what they think that is what has to happen or what they have to have in a home maybe isn't a must-have. It could be something that is nice to have. So this is a good way to kind of help them prioritize. You're going to verify their motivation by asking what steps have they taken when on the hunt for their new home. This will tell you quite a bit on how committed they are. All of this is designed to sort of gauge their motivation a little bit and to see how serious are they about what they say they're serious about. Anybody can claim to be a buyer, but not everybody really is a buyer. Okay. Then you're going to check financial ability. You're going to check to see, have they talked to a lender? Have they been pre-qualified? That's a big one. Then you'll transition to those roles and expectations. So here's everything I feel like you should be able to expect from me as your realtor. And then likewise, here's everything I feel like I can expect from you as my teammate in the transaction. That's the my role and your role sheets. I love them because basically it's here, let me manage your expectations. And here's how you can manage yours about what I'm going to do for you. I sort of see it as like a blueprint to keep them happy, because it's like, here's everything I'm going to do for you. Is there something else that you would expect that is maybe not on this list? So it's kind of like saying, here, how do I make you happy? You'll agree on those roles and expectations, and then you'll present them with the buyer's rep agreement at that time if you choose to use it. You can give them a blank copy of the sales contract at this time too. I love it because it gives them an opportunity to what?
Get familiar with it.
Yes.
So whenever they do find their house, which might be a scramble, they won't be so apprehensive to sign.
Exactly. And it gives them the chance to communicate with you of any questions that they have prior to finding that home, and have to move very quickly at that point. So that's right on. And then of course you'll set a date for the second meeting, which basically is just going to see property. The administrative prep comes right after that. So it's mailing them a thank you letter. Thank you letters are a big deal. Again, they go a long way at nurturing this relationship, especially if it's somebody that you're just meeting. Do you guys send thank you letters to your clients ever?
Usually at the end.
At the end. Good. I would encourage you to send them one in the earlier stages, just so that it's something that they know that you took extra time out to do. Send them, especially if they meet with you. I think that's a great example, Because one, it shows your gratitude that they took their time to come and meet with you. But secondly, it serves as an opportunity to say, okay, here's what's next in the process. So it keeps that ball rolling in a productive direction. You'll create their file. Everybody does this differently, I feel like. Some do digital, some do paper file, some do both. And so create their file so that you can keep all of the things organized that you're going to be working with. If they have mentioned that they have met with a lender, not a bad idea to verify the price range with that lender by calling the lender yourself and just saying, hey, I met with the Smiths. They had mentioned to me that they were pre-qualified with you for $200,000. I'm just calling to verify. Secondly, it's not a bad idea either to verify the price ceiling with your buyer. This is great because it tells the buyer that you what?
You've listened and you don't want them in over their head. And
That's right. That's right. And it's so respectful as well, not to just assume that if they're approved for $200,000 that they want to spend all $200,000. My cousin, first-time home buyer, is one of them. They were approved from the mid-twos, I think, low to mid-twos, and they had no intention of going a dime over $199.9 because they're first-time home buyers. They're a little reluctant. They don't want to get in over their heads. And so anyway, they were like, look, we're approved for this, but we don't want to spend more than this. So it's never a bad idea to verify with the buyer that you're working with. So I talked to your lender. He did confirm that you guys were approved for $200,000. How much of that are you wanting to spend? Plus, it helps you narrow down the appropriate type of property rather than, pulling a whole list of properties that they have no interest in purchasing because they feel like they're too high in price.
a lot of,
Yeah, go ahead. I have a question before she moves on. Lenders are allowed, they're okay to talk about this. If you call, do you have to have certain information? They're going to share this information? I didn't know that.
I think it depends on the lender that you call and the relationship that you have with said lender.
Okay.
Especially
I've never heard
if,
of that before.
and
I haven't had any lender not give me the
Oh, really?
yeah,
Yeah,
If you just gave them the name and
I'm
they're like,
working
okay.
with so-and-so. Oh, yeah, they told me or whatever. Most
Mhm.
of them have said
Oh,
who they're
really?
working with.
Oh.
So, and sometimes the lender actually sends you the pre-qualification letter
mhm,
Oh,
before he
really?
even goes looking.
mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay,
'Cause-
I've never communicated with lenders before on that, so that's interesting.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
they've
yeah.
got as much skin in the game as we do, because if a buyer can't find a property and they can't close on a property, then
It depends on the lender. Like
well, that's true
the
too.
banks and the credit unions, they get a paycheck no matter what.
Yeah.
But like
That's
the
true.
independent lenders
Yeah,
don't get paid unless it closes.
correct.
So,
That's a good point.
Okay, that's good to know.
And they're open. I feel like a lot of our lenders here are willing to contribute that information. They're not
Okay.
somebody that you're gonna have to pull their teeth to get them to.
yeah, because you have to have that
Mm-hmm.
pre-qualification letter to present an offer. They've got to give you something.
Absolutely.
Because my seller's not going to want to look at something
Mm-mm.
if we just say, oh yeah, they're pre-approved.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know about the letter. I worked as a loan officer. I never got calls.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. So that's why I was like, oh,
Oh, that's
I don't know
fun.
if I would have given that information out. I would have been like, oh my gosh, that's weird.
And I tell my buyers, okay, so you're pre-qualified for $200,000. Can you still go out to into a movie at that? Or
Right.
what?
Okay, that's good.
You don't want to hate your house.
That's right. Yeah. And I think, my grandfather would say, you don't want to be house poor. And that's what that means,
Yeah.
where all of the bulk of your income goes toward paying your mortgage. And then you don't have any wiggle room. What if there's a rainy day and then you're
Right.
stuck?
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
a great way to approach that. Okay. So after we verified that price ceiling with our buyers, go ahead. This is a great time to add them into your CRM or your database that you keep all of your clients in. I feel like this step is often overlooked until it's already after the fact and you're like, oh my gosh, what was their husband's name? Or, oh my gosh, did they have a dog? Was it a cute dog? This is a good opportunity to kind of make those notes as the relationship is fresh. so that you can follow up with them later and then a month after they close and all those goodies. Because we helped them prioritize their needs and their wants in finding their perfect home at our first meeting, this is what helps us go into our MLS and search for properties that meet their criteria. So that's what we're doing at this point. We're searching the MLS and we're finding homes that meet their wish list and their criteria. We'll call the listing agent to verify availability, because you guys know sometimes statuses aren't always accurate in terms of, is it under contract? Is it contingent? Are they taking backups? So on and so forth. Then you can prepare showing packages. Question, do you guys, whenever you're going out to show properties, do you bring anything with you? You do? Mm-hmm. Okay, is it just sort of like the summary sheet from the MLS?
It's the client report,
mm-hmm.
and then I bring the full report that has more information that we're not supposed to share with them,
but it's good for you. Yeah, for sure. Good. So that's all that a showing package is. And everybody, like some people don't bring anything. Some people do. I think it's a personal preference on what you choose to bring with you. I always looked at it as if anything that a buyer could ask me about the property, I want that information to be able to give them the answers that they're looking for. So a lot of times it could just come straight from the MLS. It could be a detailed report that's got notes that really are just for the agents to be able to see, but can still help you answer those questions. Or it could just be a summary sheet. Whatever you feel most comfortable with is what you should use.
I like what you said before, how you highlight what their needs and wants were.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to highlight them so then they can remember, like, okay, well,
yes,
that's the 3 out of the 4 things I asked for.
Yes.
She highlighted them. Maybe they
yes.
don't remember all of them.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah, and we will talk about that in just a second. Okay, so administrative prep done. Now it's time to show. Sometimes if you don't know a person, I've seen agents within our office have them come back and meet here first and make a copy of a driver's license just as a more of a show than anything else, just to kind of say, look, you know, let me go ahead and get a copy of your driver's license. Some people put buyers in the car with them. Some people follow. Personal preference, I'm more of a follow type person. I would rather have them follow me, but not everybody does. What do y'all do?
Sometimes I'm one of those that'll just, the first meeting, we're meeting at a house.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then if there's others, they follow.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you can kind of tell if they're real nervous. Then I meet at the office and get them in my car so we could talk.
Yeah.
And see what their fears are, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, because sometimes if they're in their car and they're following you, they're not, I don't know, I just feel like they get more if they're in the car with you.
I agree. And I think it's good too, especially in our area where somebody may be transferring in and they don't have a clue where anything is, where any neighborhood is or what. That's another good opportunity to sort of sell them on key amenities that come with certain areas and neighborhoods. So yeah, I agree. I think it is a personal preference, but I do think it goes a long way for the relationship, but also to help sell whenever you're driving around in between whatever properties you're showing.
Yeah, and if I know there's like a junky way to a house, but a nicer way.
Then you go the nicer way. Oh, yes.
You know, but if I have a weird feeling, I get somebody to go with me.
Yes.
Or I keep asking questions and then they might go away because they don't want to answer everything.
Right.
I don't know.
There's a lot of intuition that goes a long way in this business.
Trust your gut.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you do elect to have them come meet you back at the office before you go and show, whether it's to get in your car or to get a copy of a driver's license, whatever, that's also a good opportunity to review with them their needs that they expressed to you before, just in case anything may have changed. Maybe they decided they don't need 4 bedrooms, 3 would be fine. No big deal. It's just good for you to kind of help review that to keep them focused on what it is that they're looking for. If you've prepared showing packages or any kind of goodies that they can utilize as part of the showings, now would be a good time to bring that up and explain to them what you've prepared. It's just another way that you are valuable and that you are prepared for the showings that are about to take place. It's a good time to answer any questions that they may have. And now it's time to go show. You'll go get in the car, you'll tour the homes that you've set out for them, and then hopefully they'll fall in love and you'll make an offer. Hopefully. Because we always talk to you guys about viewing what you do as running your own businesses, I love this. This is what we would call a buyer department. So maybe you're on a team and you guys have buyers agents, and then you've got people who only handle listings. Maybe you do it all. Maybe you wear all the hats. Doesn't matter. If you can view your business as having departments, it helps you stay focused, and it helps you also decide how you want to treat each one of those groups and what processes are you going to use with each one of those groups. So if you don't have your business broken into departments, this would be a great way to start. This is a good example, and I love this in red. It's results by design. It's not coincidence. So we're causing the results that we want. And of course, it starts with a mission and a vision, just like our company has a mission and a vision. So say the mission is something as simple as to ensure that buyers who work with me get the home that they want and want the home that they get. In other words, they're not just going to settle. So then the vision, it's serious buyers taking an intentional and a proactive as well as a focused approach to finding and purchasing their perfect home. How do we do that? It's working as a collaborative team. So the relationship-based selling method. And then our approach, broken out even further, is having that meeting where we confirm the status and determine which direction we're going to go with them. It's talking with the lender. It's doing our research to find the right properties that meet the buyer's criteria and their needs. It's showing them where we remain focused and proactive throughout the showings. It's going all the way to making an offer where they can make an informed and an intelligent decision. It's helping to negotiate repairs if they're needed for the inspection, and then reaching our goal at the closing table. This is a great focus tool as well for you guys to sort of break it down piece by piece on how you want to work with your buyers. Okay. How many of you are tracking certain metrics in your businesses?
What do you mean?
So I think one thing that we're probably all good at is getting our reviews online. So seeing what those reviews come in as, like on Zillow or on Facebook, where people are leaving positive reviews. Those are things that we keep track of. But for other things that can help you in your business is to know what the percentage of those who ride in the car with you find and buy their perfect home. So maybe you're in a competing situation and somebody says, well, why would I want you to represent me when I'm a buyer? And you can say, well, 98% of those who come in the car that I show properties to end up buying their home. That's impressive. It's good to know these types of things. So for every person that you go and show, how many of those actually buy from you? That's good to keep track of. It's good to know too the list price to sales price ratio. Also, average number of homes viewed. How many homes do I have to show before my buyer makes an offer? That's good to keep track of. It communicates to your buyer that you are laser focused on those needs, because the properties that you show meet their needs, which means you'll have to show them less and less, if that makes sense, rather than showing 30 homes because they're all over the board and they have no idea what they want. It's helping them focus right off the beginning and nailing down that criteria so that maybe you show them 10 and then it gets narrowed down to 3. And then maybe it's just of those 3, they find the one that they love. So average number of homes viewed is good to know and good to keep track of. And then, of course, buyer testimonials, how wonderful you guys are, and those usually pop up online. Good thing to note about keeping track of these types of indicators, they are all designed to validate that intentional, focused, and proactive approach that you're using with your buyers. Okay? So there are 5 stages of working with a buyer. And a lot of this we've already talked about. And it starts with those pre-conversation activities where you have that first meeting here at the office. You're moving to the conference room because you have to be able to establish their criteria in order to help them the best way that we can. So moving to the conference room and building rapport. That's stage 1. Stage 2, setting the tone for that win-win working relationship. Okay. Stage 3, it's helping them to define their version of a perfect home. So uncovering what they need and what they want, and then helping them to prioritize what they want. Verifying the buyer motivation. So what steps have you taken, right? Tell me how you're approaching finding your perfect home. This is all designed to gauge their motivation. And then, of course, check the financial ability. Stage 4, it's roles and expectations. So covering my role, your role, working together as a collaborative team. And then finally, the 5th stage is going to work to find those homes within the MLS that meet their criteria, preparing your showing packages if you choose to do so, and then going to show those homes that meet their specific criteria. And then, of course, closing the buyer to make an informed and an intelligent offer. You guys will notice on this slide, you'll see message 1, message 2, and message 3. If nothing else, whenever you are initially communicating with a buyer or someone who says they're a buyer, these are the key messages that you want to be able to deliver throughout that conversation. The first one, establishing that win-win relationship mindset. So for it to be a win-win, we have to work as a collaborative team. We first have to uncover what it is that you feel makes up your version of a perfect home, okay? Which, of course, is message number 2. It's getting them to define their perfect home by establishing what are your needs, what are your must-haves, your non-negotiables, your deal breakers, and then what is it that are your nice-to-haves, what are your wants, and then helping them to prioritize those things. And then the third one is that roles and expectations, right? That's the blueprint to keep them happy. Here's everything that I feel like you can expect from me as your realtor in this. And then here's everything that I feel like I can expect from you as my partner or my teammate in the transaction. Okay, little side note here. So we talk a lot about being proactive and being intentional rather than just reactive. You guys, have you ever heard of Pavlov's dogs? Okay, so that's what this is all about. So you guys know the story that this guy ran this experiment where he had these dogs in these cages and he would ring a dinner bell and the dogs would be like, ooh, they knew it was dinner because they were conditioned to feel that way. So then he was like, let me do an experiment. Let me just put food in front of them and see if they drool the same way. Not so much. So then when he combined them and he rang the dinner bell with the food, the dogs were salivating and they're like, okay, we know it's dinner time. So it's all about conditioning the animals or conditioning them to elicit a certain response, okay? So we don't want to be reactive. We don't want to be at the mercy of something else. We want to take full control over the activities that we do. We don't want to be the dog that hears a bell and then we jump, okay? Or we drool in that case. So here's what typically happens. The phone rings. They say, hey, I'm going to buy a house. I'm ready to buy a house. So then, ooh, from where we're sitting, that's a potential buyer. Let's go look. Instead, whenever we come from it as more of a proactive standpoint, we want to be a little bit skeptical. Not really skeptical, just a tiny bit. Professionally skeptical. So the phone rings. It's a potential buyer. Wonderful. Why don't you come in? We'll sit down for about 30 minutes. So we're kicking off that process right off the bat. We'll talk for about 30 minutes where you can tell me what your needs are and what you want in your home. At the very least, it gets them in the door. It gets them to focus with you so that you can help them to the best of your ability. Now, I understand that this is not always something that can be done. It could be somebody who maybe works out of town, who only has a certain amount of time here to go and show. By all means, go and show. But if you can, I would encourage you guys that if you're on a phone call and you feel like it's somebody who's a real buyer, try to get them to come in so that you can sit down with them to help them define what it is that makes up their version of a perfect home. So how do we ask for that meeting then? Because you don't want to put them off, and you don't want to push them in any one way, especially when they're telling you that they want to go see a home. So here's some good dialogue. Are you currently in the market for a new home? Obviously they're calling, so that's a yes. So how are you going about finding it? This question is designed to do nothing else than to gauge their motivation. Okay. How are you going about finding your perfect home? They may tell you, we just started looking. We look at Zillow. We saw this really cute house and we think we can afford it. Or they'll say, we met with our lender last week. We were pre-qualified for blah, 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 blah. Perfect. You're going to know pretty quickly by the way that they answer that question what steps they've taken to prove that they're actually serious and that they're committed to moving forward in the process. Are you guys asking that question or something close to it when a potential buyer calls?
I don't think I am, but it just seems obvious
Mm-hmm.
that they are. I always, have you talked to a lender yet? Yes. Or no, do you have names? And,
Great.
Mm-hmm. Then you go forward.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you can tell, I don't know, so much of it is
intuition.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, I'm not showing you a house until you're pre-approved because, they're not even going to try.
Yeah.
And then some, you can tell they're going to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I feel if I don't get that face-to-face meeting, they're
Mm-hmm.
calling somebody else.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'm
Mm-hmm.
a little like the dog.
Well, and that's what I was saying too. Sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
And there's really no time to waste. I mean, sometimes whenever there's urgency, you got to do what you got to do. I just try to operate from a stand, like if somebody calls you and they're just kind of like, so here's what we're trying to do. That's a great opportunity to get them in, especially if you can tell that they are lost and they don't know what the process should be like. They don't know that they should have talked to a lender before they called you, or maybe they have, but they haven't gotten, they've submitted everything to the lender, but they haven't gotten everything back. So again, it's try to ask as many questions as you can to understand where they are in the process and where those gaps are that you can help them fill in with the value that you guys can provide.
And, clearly if the house is a more expensive house, there's more questions to ask.
Yes.
If it's a 3.2 under 150,
Mm-hmm.
there's really not a lot of options. So,
Right.
It just kind of varies.
It does. You're right. It does. It does. So dialogue then, if the buyer or the caller rather implies with their answer that they're not intentional about the steps that they're taking, or they're kind of lost, like what we just talked about, this dialogue is good. Because what it does is it sort of outlines the process that they would be a part of with you, but without going into every single detail of it. So it's also a great opportunity for you guys to have those conversations that differentiate you from other realtors in the area. Because I can tell you, your competition or other realtors are not talking like this when a buyer calls them. If anything, it's the total opposite end of the spectrum. I've literally heard from friends that when they call an agent that they haven't worked with before, they just call and they get put with someone or whatever the case. That agent will say, well, why don't you just go on Zillow or wherever you see these homes, make me a list and then we'll go see them. That's what your competition is doing, okay? Which is terrible, by the way. Our jobs are to provide them with a service. It's not up to them to go and do the work for us. We got to go and do it for them because that's what we're here for. That's our job. And we know the market. And Zillow is a terrible resource because it's not always accurate and it's not as comprehensive as what we have at our disposal, which is the MLS. So the way that you speak with people will automatically set you several bars higher than where the competition already is, especially in our marketplace. So the dialogue sounds a lot like this. So when you ask the question, how are you going about finding your perfect home? And they're going to say, oh, well, we just started out, so we're not really sure what we're even looking for, or we kind of know what we want, but we don't know where to look. Oh, okay. So how would you like to use a proactive process that will ensure that you not only get the home that you want, but you're going to want the home that you're going to get? And they're going to say, well, I don't even know what that means. So what would that even entail? Well, it starts with us getting together just for a little bit where you can tell me what you need in your perfect home. So after that, we'll talk about where you're comfortable financially, what your financial comfort zone is. And then we'll also discuss our roles and expectations needed in the partnership as we move through this transaction. So does that sound like an approach that could benefit you? And they're either going to tell you yes or no. They'll either say, well, yeah, that sounds good. So, okay, that makes sense. So, okay, would 2 o'clock tomorrow be good for you? Make the appointment. If they're like, well, no, I don't think that approach could benefit me at all. Okay, well, what about it wouldn't benefit you, right? So keep asking those questions because they may say, oh, well, I work shift work and I can't come in for a meeting for 2 weeks. Okay, well, then have the conversation over the phone. It's not all, no is not always no, right? The whole idea here is just to continue engaging them by asking them those questions to really understand what the hesitation is. Because again, it's about their motivation. Everybody can claim to be a buyer, but not everybody is a buyer. So the reason that we ask these questions and the reason that we try to push to get them to come in is so that we don't waste our time. Because that is so frustrating to get tied up with somebody who claims to be a buyer for weeks or months and they're not a buyer. And then he wasted all that time.
This one buyer I worked with, he had a crazy work schedule and you know, you have to have the job in order to buy something. I said, your job is
It's probably like, I'm sorry. It's interfering with mine too. But seriously.
I knew I could say that.
Yeah.
You know,
yes.
yeah.
But seriously, you're right.
So, yeah. You know what level you're
My
on.
mom's fiance is like that. He's not home for 6 to 8 weeks at a time. He's in oil and gas, so he's a driller. So he'll be off at a site forever, you know, and it's 2.5 months before he even gets 3 days off where he gets to come home and then he has to turn right back around. So sometimes it's just not feasible. Yeah. And if that's the case and they say, oh, I work shift work or I work off site or I'm offshore, have the conversation on the phone. Yeah. So that's another valuable lesson and not just taking no at face value. Just continue to dig a little bit deeper. So justifying the meeting. People will always trust and follow the things that we can logically and tangibly explain. And to keep in mind, time is limited. So we have to choose to invest in what's vital and nothing else. So sometimes they may say, well, can't you just email me the information? I mean, I just need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Okay. So what if this is somebody who very well does need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, but not for another 6 to 8 months. And we don't know that because we didn't ask. Well, guess how much time you just wasted? 6 to 8 months. So consistently emailing information to somebody who is behaviorally unwilling, right? That's a high risk for us. And the risk is what? Wasted time. Wasted time. So remember, serious buyers behave like serious buyers. So can't you just email me the information? And or better yet, other agents that I've worked with before have not had me come in and meet with them to get information about these houses. Now, again, if you sense they're getting irritated or frustrated, redirect. But If you sense that they're just trying to gain an understanding of what the purpose of a meeting is, this is good dialogue for that. And I love it because it's a good way to reinforce your value. That doorbell. To reinforce your value. And so again, other agents don't have me do this. Exactly. Oh my gosh, exactly. So understand that I am serious about what I do. I run a business. I don't do this part-time. And so I have a process that I use with all of my clients. Therefore, so what we need to do first, before I start emailing you information, is to define your perfect home so that the homes that I do email you fit your needs and are homes that you're going to want to be in. Secondly, I need to make sure that those homes that I send you fall well within your comfort zone financially. I would hate to send you homes that are maybe outside of your price range or way more than what you're wanting to spend. So, and then I would love to be able to discuss what we can expect of each other throughout the transaction. I believe that the best approach, especially when we're talking about investing a large sum of money, is to work as an intentional and proactive team. So wouldn't you agree? Now, if they tell you, okay, that makes sense, I'm good with that, then book the appointment to meet with them. And if they tell you no, move on. You do not want to step over dollars to pick up dimes. I love that. So move on. They are clearly not ready. So diving in a little bit deeper for meeting in the conference room. Typical agents go right into the car, okay? For anybody who claims to be a buyer with no proof that makes them an actual buyer, okay? That's risky because, as we know, talk can be cheap. Wanting to buy a home does not make somebody a legitimate buyer. And that sounds really harsh, but it's true. I mean, if they aren't even remotely capable of being financially qualified, then there's nothing we can do for them anyway. So we need to develop a habit, or try to develop a habit, by getting them to come in and go straight to the conference room and make it about them, right? Because it's all about their needs. It's understanding, hey, what is it that you need and want in your home so that I can find exactly what it is that you want, and we'll go and see those, rather than just looking at things that maybe we can't even afford or don't meet our needs at all. So this helps to build that healthy win-win relationship right from the start. You could recruit the front desk to help you if you would like. And I do this quite a bit, especially when I'm meeting with people who want to join RE/MAX I. About 5 minutes prior to my meeting, I will call Heidi and I'll say, hey, I'm expecting Ashley to be here in 5 minutes. Please let me know as soon as she gets here. And, you know, she should be here at 2 o'clock. And Heidi will say, okay. And then sure enough, my appointment will come in and she'll say, oh, are you Ashley? It helps. So I say 5 minutes just because it's fresh on her mind and it's not enough time for her to lose that. So that's another option as well. You could even tell her, I've had Heidi do this too, offer them a bottle of water. Her name is Ashley, offer her a bottle of water, especially when it was like July and it was 1,000,000 degrees outside. People are like, oh, thank God, you know, thank you so much. So you can recruit the front desk to help you. All right. And so before you actually go into the conference room or before you have your meeting, get in the zone. In other words, focus, clear your head of any and all outside distractions. So if you had a terrible morning, that person that you're about to meet with should never, ever know it. Okay. You want to focus on the conversation that you're about to have and imagine the desired end result. Do y'all do this? Do you ever envision what you're wanting to happen prior to actually having the conversations? Because I do it. I will be the first to tell you that I do it. Like in an interview capacity, when I'm driving to the interview that I'm going to go have, I see it in my head how I want the conversation to go. And I kind of rehearse in my head how I want the conversation to go. And at the end of it, in my mind's eye, I see myself shaking hands with whoever I'm interviewing with and getting an offer letter like the day after. I don't know how it works, but it does. I think it just kind of tricks your mind into thinking, okay, this is going to happen. And then you're not as nervous about it because you've already seen it happen. And so, plus it helps you prepare so that you're not kind of stumbling throughout the process. And I kid you not, I've been on not a ton of interviews, but I've had my fair share, and I've never, ever not received an offer after my interview. I think there's power to being able to visualize what you want. And it helps you, again, not to be so nervous when you go in there. So we talked a lot about building the rapport, right? Maybe some of us aren't that great at chit chat. And if you're not, this is great stuff right here. You want to keep the acronym FORD in your mind. So family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So if you get stuck, it never fails. Ask about any one of those things. Are you originally from this area? How long have you lived in this area? What brought you here? Do you have kids? Why are you moving? That's a good one. What do you do for a living? Now we're talking about occupation. Well, what got you into that line of work? How long have you been doing it? Recreation. What do you guys do for fun? You know, and then there could be an event that's coming up. Maybe they run. Well, oh my gosh, did you guys do the color run that was downtown? It's so much fun. So anything can lead to something else. And then dreams, you know, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live? Or what's your most, at the top of your bucket list, where would you most like to travel to? Anything to keep them engaged and keep them talking is the goal here. So setting the tone, right? So we've established rapport. We're going to set the tone. We're going to talk about that win-win relationship. We're going to let them know kind of the high points of what the meeting is going to accomplish. And then confidentiality. Do you guys, when you're having conversations with your buyers, talk about confidentiality at all?
If it's an intermediary deal.
Okay. Okay. So
it's just, I don't know. I know that I'm not going to go blab my people's business, so I know I'm not going to. But
so you guys know, like anytime that maybe like the person who does your taxes or your attorney or your doctor, they always tell you, hey, look, you know, it's all confidential what you talk about here. It stays here, whatever. It's not a bad idea to incorporate that language into the conversations that you're having with either your sellers or your buyers. Because to me, it just communicates a different level of professionalism, because when they've heard that, they've heard it from other high level professionals. And it goes a long way, I think, to help them feel safe about the conversations that they're going to have. Some people are funny when it comes to talking about their finances, and they don't want anybody else to know their business. That's a big one. Or maybe even worse, maybe it's a not so great situation and you've got a divorce on your hands and you've got a husband and a wife, or maybe it's an estate. There's lots of different reasons to incorporate confidentiality into these conversations. So I'm going to run through this dialogue as if I were the agent, just so you guys can hear it. My challenge for you guys is, as I always say, it's not so much about just memorizing the script. I'm not somebody who advocates for scripts, but I do think they serve a great purpose in getting you seasoned on the flow of what needs to be said. I always think that the more authentic you can be, the better. But this serves a really great purpose to help you practice what needs to be said and in what order. So it starts, of course, by establishing that win-win, right? So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, first, let me just tell you guys how much I appreciate you coming in and meeting with me. And I want you to know that my goal today is to establish the foundation for a win-win relationship. So since this is going to be about a large financial investment for you guys, we want to make sure that you get the home that you want, and more importantly, want the home that you're going to get. So what we're going to do before we go and do anything else is we're going to define your version of a perfect home. So we're also going to make sure that whatever we find and whatever we look at falls within your financial comfort zone. And then also we're going to talk about our expectations that we have of one another so that we can continue to operate as a productive team. Now, I also want you to know that anything that you say here today is going to be totally confidential. So please feel free to be as open and honest with me as you feel that you need to be. Okay? And then that's it. And then you're going to get them to start with the criteria sheet, marking what's a must-have, what is a need, what's a non-negotiable. I have to have this in my home, and then helping them define what it is that they want as well. Okay? Any questions about that kind of introduction for that meeting? Are you guys doing a version of this in some capacity? Yeah. So I love this because it makes it all about them. There's very rarely an I about me, the agent, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and let me fill your head with empty promises. It's about them and their needs and their financial comfort zone and the roles and expectations of each other. And it's a team. It's a collaboration. I love that. So, criteria sheet. Again, an example of the criteria sheet should be in your packets. I also have one with the RE/MAX One logo if you guys would like it. It's in a Word document, so you can add to or remove things that you don't really see a whole lot of. But this is a good way, this is dialogue that you can use that will help your buyer fill it out. So if you've got a husband and a wife situation, they both get a sheet, okay? Because here's the thing, while maybe the wife is very vocal, maybe it's the husband who's making the decision. Or maybe it's the husband who's really vocal, but the wife's calling the shots. So you want to make sure that you include them both so that they're both equally heard, and then they can determine who's going to be the boss. So you've got the buyers in there. You've just kind of given them the overview of what's going to happen today. So now it's time for them to fill out their criteria sheet. So what I would like for each of you guys to do is to complete the criteria sheet so that we can start to see the vision of what your perfect home looks like. So I'm going to step out for a second and allow you guys to fill it out. And then whenever you're ready, just open the door. Is there anything that you guys need? Do you need more water? And they're going to tell you yes or no. So this is good for them to kind of work through the criteria sheet together without you in the room, because maybe they're talking about, well, we can't really afford 4 bedrooms, or I don't know. What do you think about that? And then it just gives them their space. Okay. So when they open the door, ask them, how'd it go? Did you guys think that this was helpful to help you sort of focus on what it is that you're wanting and what it is that you're needing in your home? This is good because it reinforces the value. This is a great, great opportunity to differentiate yourself, right? Because you're helping them focus on what's important to them, okay? It's very important that we are focused, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, because reacting in our market without having any kind of pre-established criteria is basically like going to the grocery store without your shopping list, right? Have you ever experienced that? Because I have, and it's a nightmare. So what I would like to do now that we've established everything that you have to have in your home, let's talk about the things that you would like to have or the things that you want. This is the example of the criteria sheet right up here. So you guys will see it says, help me help you. Please identify the following features or amenities as they apply to your needs and your wants. You'll put an N for need as something that is a have to have, a non-negotiable. And then a W for something that you would like to have, but it's not a necessity. And then the U is something that you don't want at all, or they could just cross it out, that they don't need that, they don't want it, whatever the case may be. This is not a full list, but you guys can see, do you want 1 story? Do you want 2? How many bedrooms do you want? Would you prefer a split floor plan? Do you have to have a split floor plan? Maybe you would also like, I don't know, let's see, a breakfast room or an island in the kitchen, whatever the case may be. You guys can see how good this would be to help them focus on what it is they need and want in a home. So helping them to prioritize what they want. Since all of the needs are the first priority, those have to happen no matter what, what I would like to do now is to help you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, prioritize your wants. So looking at your list here, what's the one thing on your list that would make all of the others seem not as important? Or in other words, what's your top want? What's your most important want? Maybe it's something like, hey, look, we have to have 3 bedrooms, but we would love a study or a 4th bedroom or something like that. Or, you know, we have to have a split floor plan, but we would love a bonus room upstairs. Something like that. What's their top want? Okay, and then you just work your way down the list. Okay, next to that one, what's your second most wanted feature? And third and fourth, depending on how many wants that they have on the sheet. Now, helpful hint here, stay curious, okay? You want to stay curious about the needs and wants that could be satisfied with other options. So maybe they tell you that they have to have 3 bedrooms and a study. Well, would they consider 4 bedrooms? So they get the 3 bedrooms, but they can make the 4th bedroom an office. That's what we did. We had to have an office in our house because we've got office furniture because our old house had an office. But when we fell in love with this home that we just bought, it did not have an office space. So the 4th bedroom became our office. Stay curious, okay? And again, engage both the husband and the wife, or the husband and the husband, or the wife and the wife, whatever, when prioritizing the wants, okay? So, you know, Mary, what's your most important want? Joe, do you agree? Now, after we have kind of narrowed that down, now we want to understand the financials. So are you going to be paying cash, or are you getting a loan? Well, maybe we're just kind of in the beginning of this. We're still unsure. You know, we can pay cash, but maybe we need to, you know, maybe we should finance it or whatever. Or, you know, well, we really want to do this, but maybe we're still looking at 60 days because we're trying to clean up our credit or whatever. This is good to know because you can continue to follow up with them over the next 8 weeks so that when they are ready to pull the trigger, you're ready. Okay, again, we don't want to close the door on any of those relationships just because there's a misunderstanding, okay? They may say, you know, I don't think we're ready right now, but we will be very soon. Okay, well, is that 2 to 3 months? Is it 4 to 6? What does that look like? Okay, so continue to ask those questions. Okay, they may even tell you, well, we want to wait a few months because that's when all the listings hit the market, right? Because they hear that a lot. They hear, oh, in the springtime, that's the busy season. So that's when all the listings are going to be available. Not so true. Now, a lot of listings do hit the market, but that doesn't mean that homes don't sell all throughout the year, okay? So that's all that this dialogue has for you guys to see. So homes do sell on a daily basis. So I want to make sure that we don't waste your time or have you fall in love with something that may not be around when you are ready, okay? So I recommend that we wait until you're fully committed to buying the home. Is that fair? And if they're like, okay, that makes sense. So at that point, perfect. Would you mind if I stayed in touch with you? I'll send you a weekly email of anything new that hits the market. And then when you're ready, I'll be ready with you. It's a good way to stay top of mind with them, provide them with something of value, keep them updated about what's hitting the market. And then when they're ready, you can just move right in, okay? If they don't want to wait, so we're just looking home sell on a daily basis. I recommend that we wait, right, until you're fully committed. Well, no, I want to go look. I love this house. I don't think it hurts to go look, okay? So, couple of different options here. No, that's okay. That's okay. Okay, we'll see you soon. You're so welcome. So, couple of different options here. You can choose to go and show at that point when you know that they're not ready to buy just because you want to make them happy, which is a perfectly good reason. Or you can remind them of, hey, look, so do you remember at the beginning of our conversation when we talked about that win-win relationship? We may be straying away from that at this point because what I want to do is commit 100% of my efforts to finding your perfect home. But when we're ready and we find that home, I want to make sure that you can buy it. And you want to make sure that you can buy it. Because what if you fall in love with it and you're not ready or you're not able to, and then someone else is going to scoop it up? You'll be devastated, and I'll be devastated. So that is not what I would consider a win-win in any way, right? So that's sort of a gut check moment. Either, okay, I can go show this person because I want to protect the relationship, or let me remind you of what we talked about at the beginning, about that win-win. Or maybe it's a combination of both of those. Just kind of saying, okay, we can do that. However, how are you going to feel if you walk into this home and you love it and you can't buy it? Would you be okay if someone else did? Because that's the reality, right?
And then they'll compare every house to that one that they lost.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, that's normal. It is so normal because they get emotionally attached. Again, can you guys see how these questions are designed to protect them and protect you?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So then checking the financial ability. You want to make sure first that they're motivated, which those questions that we just went through, that's all designed to gauge the motivation. So now let's make sure that they're able to pay. All right. So are you going to be paying cash or are you going to be getting a loan? We're going to be getting a loan. Now, have you been pre-qualified? Here's those questions. Do you have your pre-approval letter? Do you have a pre-qualification letter? Do you have any kind of communication from the lender, right? Or do you have a loan? Well, no. Do you know a lender where you'd be comfortable? Because sometimes they don't even know where to go or who to use or what to do. So that's a good chance for you guys to kind of share with them your picks, the lenders that you like to work with, people that you prefer and that you trust.
You know what I'm trying to do, because you give them these good lenders' names and numbers, and they don't always call. So I've incorporated this a couple of times, saying, can I have a lender call you? Can I have so-and-so who I know will treat you great? Give you a call. Yes. And it makes it easier, really.
That's nice, because people they wait till the last minute, they put things off, they keep forgetting. So that's, you're now.
And I'm trying to do that because it's really easier for me. Then I know they've talked to someone who's really good and can either get this done or advise them what they need to do to be able to do it in a few months.
Yeah, I love it.
That's cool.
I love it. And so after they agree, you're like, okay, I'm going to have so-and-so call you. Do you then follow up with your buyer after a few days, or do you call the lender and say, hey?
Well, the lender calls me and says, we're good to go. So I'm reaching out to the buyer.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. But, there's so much of this is gut related.
It is.
I didn't really think about it until today, but some people, you can't do that too. They've got to do it their way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's all about being understanding of the person that you're working with and really kind of getting a solid read on their personality. So that'll help kind of clue you in on which direction you should go with them every step of the way.
Are you a first-time home buyer? And that right there, if they're like, yes, and like, oh, they've never gone through this process. Whereas other people are like, yeah, we've done this a million times. They know. They know the drill. So you're not going to be like.
Well, and those are the ones that I say, okay, lending's not like it used to be.
No.
The lenders can ask for information.
That's right.
For more information.
And more.
For more information. and more. And more. And more. And I exaggerate it.
Yeah.
So they know it's normal.
Yes. And then they're not being just so scrutinized by this lender.
It's not you. It's the way lending is.
That's right.
More.
Seriously.
That's funny.
Seriously. And even it had changed so much just in like the 5 years so we bought our first house in 2012. And then when we came back and bought this year, we had to provide so much more information than we did the first time. And we were like, what the heck? Because we were still conventional, just like we were prior, but yeah. And we were like, is something wrong? So I love that because you're managing their expectation right from the very beginning. So they're not feeling like, oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to get this done because they keep asking for information. Is there an issue or what's going on? I love that.
That's good.
Okay, so a couple of other questions you can ask, especially if you are working with a first-time home buyer. Do you have the cash available to use for earnest money, right? Or do you have a reserve fund in place for those closing costs or anything that might need to be prepaid? This is good because it helps to establish the expectation as well for things that they may not be aware of, to where they get in over their head and they're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this at closing? Or I didn't know that that was going to come up, so now what do I do? So it's sort of, it helps you to avoid those hiccups throughout the process, but it also helps to manage their expectation.
It surprises me how many people don't realize their earnest money and option checks will be cashed.
Yeah.
So, you know, I
Tell 'em.
I tell
Remind
them
them.
when I'm getting them,
Mhm.
these are going to be cashed. Just so you know. Just-
Yeah. They're like, what? Like
Yeah.
tomorrow?
And another little thing I've learned, you have to say something 3 times for them to get there. You know, some things they get right away, but you can tell you need to say it 3
Yeah.
different times.
For sure.
Click, finally.
Oh yeah, repetition, redundancy, that's the name of the game. So, okay, now that we've talked about the financial comfort zone and the ability there, let's talk about roles and expectations. All right, so now that we have a motivated buyer and one who's qualified, let's now talk about those boundaries for a successful working relationship. So, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, now that we've established that we're good to go, it's been my experience that conflict really only happens when those expectations change. So with that in mind, let me share with you what I feel like you have the right to expect from me as your teammate in the transaction. Okay, and then you'll hand them the My Role sheet, right? So here's everything that you're going to get from me, and here's everything you should expect from me. Now, I like the idea of asking, is there anything that is maybe not included on this list that you would expect from me as well? Again, it's a blueprint to keep them happy and to manage and meet those expectations. So after you guys have agreed on all the things that make up what you're going to do, let's switch gears. So since this is going to be a partnership, let me share with you what I feel like I have a right to expect from you as my partner in this. And then, so there's the My Role sheet. And then here's the Your Role sheet. And I love that because it's basically just kind of like a checklist, so to speak, for them. So, you know, meet with a lender. Don't make any large purchases or incur any kind of debt whenever you're going through this process. Respond to the calls from mortgage, title, inspection, anybody else involved in the process. Loyalty, love that one, number 7. Respect the seller's property. Inform the agent, you guys, immediately if anything changes. Let the agent know if the buyer is going to be leaving for longer than a week, and then have fun and enjoy the process. Again, is there anything that maybe I didn't include on this that you feel should be on this list? Right? It's all about the exchange, keeping them engaged. Now, ensuring buyer loyalty. Now, this, I don't know if this is taking place because I feel like people are just so flippant and so wishy-washy here lately. But I don't think it hurts to incorporate this into your conversation. So here's a good place to start. I would like to commit to finding your perfect home, but I have to ask for just one thing in return from you guys, that you commit to working exclusively with me. Now, if you have a buyer's rep, that's sort of self-explanatory, I think. But if they say, well, what do you mean exclusively? Basically, if you attend any open houses or talk with any new home builders without me, let them know that you're happily being represented by me and that you are being represented by a realtor. If you drive by a home or if you see one in a magazine or online or in the newspaper that you feel like meets your criteria, call me. Also, that you're not going to solicit the service of any other realtor while you're searching for your home. Is that fair? And they'll either tell you yes or no. Now, I can guarantee you that I'm going to do all that I can to ensure that you're going to get your perfect home. Okay. What do you say? Now, they're going to say, okay, sure. But it's good because it just sort of establishes your expectation. Like, hey, I'm going to be working my booty off to make sure that I get you in what you need to be. And so all I ask in return is that you let anybody know that you're working with me. If you go to an open house, let them know that you're being represented, and then just keep communication open with me. Do you guys talk about anything like this? Does this ever come up in your conversations?
If somebody's thinking new construction,
Okay.
I will say, I can set up meetings with builders if you'd like, that sort of thing.
Good.
I don't say it actually this way.
Yeah. But that message is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like if somebody just calls when I have phone time or something, it's like, well, they're asking about a house, and I'm like, well, are you working with a realtor? And they're like, yes or no. And if they say yes, I'm like, well, why did you call them? Because I don't want to step on anybody's toes.
Yeah.
Just,
Good.
hopefully they'll behave.
Behave. So true. Okay, good. Now, closing out that first meeting, right? So the meeting where you guys have talked about what their needs are, what their wants are. You've established their financial parameters, where they're comfortable financially. You've then talked about the roles, the expectations that you have of each other in the partnership. We talked about confidentiality. So then let's then stop the meeting, close that first meeting out. So at this point, your buyer has been allowed to self-discover what that working relationship with you is going to be like. Okay. Now, you can present your buyer with the buyer's rep agreement after you've established the loyalty. If you choose to use a buyer's rep agreement, totally up to you. And then let them know that over the next day or so, you're going to start looking through the MLS to find all of the properties that meet their criteria, as well as verify with the lender that they are pre-qualified for what they're pre-qualified for, and then you can verify their price ceiling with the buyer. And then, of course, you want to set the appointment for when you're going to go and show. Okay. Now, following through after that first meeting, send them a thank you note, right? Anytime that somebody takes time out of their day to meet with you, send them a thank you note. Goes a long way. And like I said, it serves sort of a what's next purpose. So it keeps them focused, keeps the ball moving in a productive direction. Create their file, okay? Whether it's on paper, maybe it's digital, maybe it's both. You'll call the loan officer of your choice to verify, or maybe the loan officer will call you, however you've got that set up. Then let the buyer know, hey, I talked to my lender. He did confirm that you guys called and that you were good to go for $200,000. How much of that are you wanting to spend? Where are you comfortable? Then you're going to put the criteria that they've given you into the MLS to narrow down the options. And then you'll prepare your showing packages for the listings that meet probably 70% of their criteria. So, and that's all that there really is to it. Preparing showing packages. Right. So you can print a full report. You can do a summary page. And then you can highlight the criteria that the listing meets based on that criteria sheet that the buyer filled out. So if the listing that you want to go and show them has 3 beds, 2 baths, just like what they say they need, and it has a 3-car garage, and this one also has a 3-car garage, highlight those features so that it visually shows them, hey, this is a good option based on what you said you needed and what you wanted. I love that. Okay. And it helps you because you can sort of, whenever you're routing out the homes that you want to show, you can kind of insert those really good ones, either all at the beginning to where they kind of go, okay, and they see the ones that best meet their criteria first. It will protect you from having to see 10 or 15 homes, right? If they see what they know meets their needs right up front, you're in a better position to help them make an offer more quickly because they're going to find the one that they feel most meets their needs. Okay. You can prepare pricing information so that they can make an informed and an intelligent offer. Print any kind of tax information. Sometimes you'll be asked about taxes. What were the taxes last year? What are the taxes? What can we expect? Anything that can help you answer their questions while you're whenever you're showing them a property. Okay.
And I like to, like if it's in Jefferson County, I try to, if I have time, check to see if the roof is windstorm certified.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, we print that out right away. That's on our checklist. We start dealing with someone.
Yeah.
We go straight to the site.
That's been something that I feel like has come up in sales meetings so much is windstorm. There's just been so much discussion about that recently about
It's been for
Isn't it
years.
needed now, or isn't it required?
If you have a loan, yeah,
Yeah.
in Jefferson,
yes.
Oh, just Jefferson.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
not Orange.
didn't realize
or
that.
Hardin.
We
Mm-mm.
just have it on our checklist. It's like one of the first contracts that we just print out and have it ready to go and ask them. And we look and try to find it. And now we just learned, like one house we just listed last week. We looked and it said he didn't have one. And then when we asked him, he goes, no, I have it right here. And he had it, but the site was wrong. So it's good to check on the site first and then ask them, because sure enough, he had it and the site was wrong. So
Wow.
that's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. Very. Yikes. Okay, so that was part one of the buyer process. Part two is sort of wrapping it all up, but also talking about helping the buyer compare apples to apples. So from one home to the other as you're showing, especially if you're showing multiple in one day, it helps them to say, okay, it keeps you kind of comparing one to one. So they're not comparing the home that they're in right then to the three that they just saw. It's mostly just one to one, apples to apples. And then helping them to make an informed and an intelligent offer. So yeah, it's good. Part two is basically just a continuation of bringing them from showing to contract to helping negotiate the repairs to closing. That's at 2:00 today. Hope you guys can make it back. And if y'all have any questions in the meantime, please do not hesitate to ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.